Hello and welcome to the Thursday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is November 29th, 2018. In just a moment, we're going to talk about a very active weather pattern that's going to happen through the end of the week. We're going to discuss the aviation, marine, and public forecast in just a moment, but let me take a moment and tell you, you can always get our forecast by going and dialing on your phone 1-800-472-0391, and also on the website you can go to weather.gov/Alaska and just click on the area of your choice. Now let's go on to the headline news of the day. Today is certainly worth a headline. Let me step aside for you as I cover these headlines. We're going to be heading into the next 2 days with winter weather, which is moving into the west coast starting tonight. And then we're going to see a strong front, which brings widespread winds across much of the state. Now, the only place excluded from that is going to be the southeast. However, we are going to see a warm air mass push across the southern mainland, and that's going to make some progress inland, causing some precipitation type problems. And then we're also going to have some heavy snow totals for locations across the north and western areas of the state. Now let's get on to the hazards map for specific locations. Let's first look at the advisory. We have an advisory out, and this is for the Copper River Basin. We're going to see visibility is reduced to 1/2 mile at times, as we have already experienced throughout today. Along and north of this region, we do have a watch. This is out for a high wind warning, but that's not until Saturday. So we're expecting those winds to come up with a front that's approaching. But for now, along the coast locations from the Seward Peninsula, actually, south towards the Yukon Delta, out here including Gamble for tonight, we have a snow advisory for blowing snow with the gusty winds picking up. That's going to reduce visibilities down to 1/2 mile or less at times. And then all areas along here for the west is going to be seeing some heavier snow amounts. We're going to see some precipitation types, freezing rain possible across the lower Yukon locations. So keep an eye out. We will be updating these as this event gets a little bit closer to the time. You'll see those changing colors. Now let's look at the satellite maps just to get a position of the front right here along the Bering Strait, just entering towards the Bering Strait. So that front is stretching back towards the Alaska Peninsula this afternoon, and putting this into motion one more time. You can see that was moving at a quick pace across the Bering locations. Now the low center is back towards the west, centered in the northern Bering. And then to the east of the system, we do have an area of ridging out across the Gulf, so that is keeping conditions a little bit quieter across the Gulf waters today, and we're seeing some breaks in the clouds all along the coastal locations. Now, across the interior, we're seeing some weak low pressure beginning to diminish with a ridge just out there to the west. And we're seeing also a break in the activity across the northeastern Beaufort seacoast. However, we do still have some moisture across the northwest coast and some gusty winds causing some blowing snow issues in those locations. Now let's take a look at the surface map today. Here's the ridging that I was talking about here, just inland across the Canada area. Between the ridge and low pressure, we just have some light shower activity across the eastern waters there of the Gulf, and then this low pressure was previously over the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island last night. So fairly quiet conditions, a lot of drier conditions across the southern areas and the interior, a few showers developing mainly along upper level wave systems, and then across the northern coast, just some waves propagating out towards the east there. The main activity is along this frontal boundary, which is now approaching the Kuskokwim Delta. This is mainly brings some rain across the eastern and southern areas of the Bering, back towards the central Aleutians, and then we're seeing a cold front push in behind it, and that's where we see those convective cloud activity on the satellite. Now ahead of this system, the front has got some very tight gradient squeezes. That's what these isobars here are along and ahead of the red warm front. So we're seeing that blowing snow all along the west coast. Now, across the southern areas of the Bering, we're also seeing some strong southerly flow developing along the Alaska Peninsula, mainly gusting up to 45 miles per hour across those southern waters, with the gusts to the north all the way up to 50 miles per hour already, noted at Gamble later this afternoon. Now, as we head through the overnight hours, expect those gusts to be between 35 and 55 miles per hour, possibly up to 60 miles per hour up there towards the Bering Strait locations. That's going to keep that blowing snow in the forecast during the overnight hours, reducing visibilities, creating travel problems. Across the interior, a little bit quieter, some shower activity mainly across the state. We'll see some snow with the shower activity across any of the Gulf and the southeast locations as rain. Fog developing is along the southeast there for the overnight hours, with fog also expected along the north coastal locations. Out towards the west across the Bering, here's the low sliding in at 976 millibar. Not a very strong storm system, but what we're going to watch is that there's another North Pacific system that's going to be sliding up on the south side of this, and that's going to be reinforcing the gradient. So on Friday, we'll see some very gusty winds develop across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. So actually a continuation of winds becoming stronger as we head into Friday. So we get this gradient squeeze, and those winds will get into the southeast or southwestern areas of the state, pushing some rain a little bit further to the north as this front begins to push inland. Now the challenge here is Friday, until this warm air advection really gets pushed inland, there's going to be a slow changeover from snow to rain across the southwest. So probably in the later part of the afternoon hours, some snow is possible ahead of this system. Mainly the heaviest snow, like I said, the locations are going to be across the west coast. And then to the north, it's going to be fairly quiet finally until you get to the northwest coast, of course, and then south, that's where the winds and so expect just fog conditions from the Brooks Range and north. And then we should see some breaking up of the clouds across the eastern areas of the state for your Friday. And then clouds will be spreading back across south central during the early part of the day, although the fog will be hanging in across the Copper River Basin there. Now for the southeast, other than fog in the morning hours, should be breaking up during the afternoon with fairly benign conditions across much of the Gulf waters, except where the front moves in during the afternoon. Passing Kodiak Island should be rain for Kodiak Island and towards the Alaska Peninsula. Again, with to the western areas, the system not deepening much, but that enhancement's what's causing that frontal push inland, and mainly just showers out towards the west around the low pressure system. Now, as we head into the day on Saturday, this low pressure system is really going to be affecting much of the state, except for the southeast, which stays under the influence of the ridging out towards the east. So expect windy conditions to develop, especially across gap locations that are affected when low pressure systems move inland. So we'll see gusts between 45 to 65 miles per hour for the 4 gap locations located across the southern areas of the state and up there towards the west, where the front is really pushing up towards the Bering Strait. The blowing snow conditions, that's going to be reducing visibilities and causing travel problems. That warm front is going to be pushing all the way towards the Brooks Range. However, temperatures at the surface are going to stay below freezing, so we're expecting snow for most of the state. It's where you get towards the lower Yukon Valley and south as you see that transition over to rain. So be aware that there is a possibility for freezing rain, mainly south of the Seward Peninsula there, as that warm air advects further north. So all of Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Delta and Valley should see that changeover on Saturday. However, as that front pushes through, it'll become lighter precip with another low pressure system very quick to follow in the same pattern. So this is going to keep quite the active pattern as we head through the end of the weekend even. Expect the colder air mass to stay across the western areas of the Bering, so that will stay all showers. And just one last look at the southeast. Here is your Saturday weather. It's going to stay under the influence of ridging. So looking at your temperatures for tonight, temperatures across the southeast are going to be about freezing or just below. And along the rest of the coastal locations, expected to drop it into the 20 to 30 degree range with a quick cooling of the temperatures as you head inland. Temperatures nearing zero as you head towards the central and northern areas of the state. Along the west, expect temperatures in the teens to low 20s. Across the Alaska Peninsula, a little bit warmer there, near 40 degrees, with cooler temperatures out towards Shemya, back towards freezing. For your high temperatures tomorrow, here's the area where you're really going to notice the warm temperatures across the Alaska Peninsula and warming to Kodiak Island. Now, across the interior, it's going to stay on the cooler side in the teens with the single digits or just below across the northern tier of the state. And along the coastal locations, expect high temperatures to reach 32 to 35 degrees, with just inland staying mainly in the mid-20s. Across the southeast, a little bit nicer conditions. Late day is going to warm up into the mid-30s to near 40 degrees. And then as we head into your Saturday morning, expect very cold temperatures once again across the eastern areas of the state. And then across the southeast, expect temperatures primarily to drop once again with those clearing conditions. It's going to be a little bit cooler on that day, so temperatures getting down into the lower 20s to lower 30s. And then this is where you're really going to see the warm up as you head into Saturday morning. Those temperatures are going to be climbing back again above the freezing mark for the overnight period. So temperatures rising Friday night into Saturday morning across much of the southwest, with the southern tier of the state climbing into the lower 20s and into the mid 30s. We're going to be seeing that increase mainly across the southwest, with near steady temperatures across the eastern Alaska Peninsula, and then cooling as that colder air mass pulls towards the west coast. Now in just a moment, we'll be back with your aviation weather.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look at your aviation conditions as we head through the end of the week. We're expecting widespread MVFR conditions across much of the state to start off your Friday morning, with also a swath of IFR conditions across the west and southwest locations all the way through the Alaska Peninsula. Now, looking over to the southeast, we are going to start the day on Friday with MVFR conditions across especially the inner channels there, and just patchy MVFR conditions across much of the Gulf extending up towards the Alaska Range. Now as we head into the afternoon, those IFR conditions are going to spread further to the east over towards the Kenai as a front moves inland. So look for widespread MVFR conditions across much of the state, some breaks to VFR across the northern tier of the state, and also for the southeast. Now let's take a look at the bearing. Still widespread MVFR conditions for this location, with IFR conditions continuing and also affecting the eastern Aleutians to the central waters. Now let's take a look at your Saturday forecast. For the morning hours, we will continue to see this IFR conditions spreading further inland across the Seward Peninsula towards the Brooks Range, and look for MVFR conditions for those locations as well. Along the coast, MVFR and widespread across the Bering for the Alaska Peninsula. Also look for the possibility of IFR conditions. For the southern tier of Anchorage, we will see IFR conditions still being problematic with MVFR widespread across the Gulf waters, and just north of the Dixon entrance, we will see some MVFR conditions to start your day Saturday. And then for Saturday afternoon, looks like mainly VFR for the southeast, but across the southern tier and the Gulf waters, we're looking at widespread MVFR, IFR conditions as well. IFR is going to hang on through Saturday afternoon across or south of the Brooks Range towards the Seward Peninsula and just out there into the northern parts of the Bering. IFR as well for the Alaska Peninsula, with widespread MVFR conditions continuing across much of the Bering as low pressure dominates. Now let's take a look at your passes in more depth. We'll see Anaktuvuk Pass is going to be MVFR, as well as Adigan Pass staying MVFR all day. And then Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will go VFR to IFR fairly quickly as that front moves in. And then we'll see Rainy with the same trend, VFR to IFR. And Windy Pass will be MVFR. Isabel will be MVFR, MVFR for Mentasta, and Tanita will go from VFR to IFR. Portage will also drop, but from MVFR to IFR. And Chilkoot and White Pass will go MVFR to better conditions late day to VFR. The freezing levels to start your day on Friday morning will be draped across the southeast there and all along the Gulf Coast towards the southern edge of the state here, southwestern edge along Bristol Bay, and then moves north above the Pribilof Islands. And then the 2,000-foot level climbs to 6,000 feet as it as you move towards the northern Pacific. And then the 2,000-foot level will be basically draped across the central areas of the Gulf of Alaska. Looking at your areas of concern for icing, we're going to see above 3,000 feet along the eastern areas of the Bering to the southern Bering. We'll see possible moderate conditions for these locations and isolated conditions for the rest of the state, and that's going to be above 2,000 feet with the widespread light icing possibilities across much of the Bering. Now let's take a look at the jet stream. This is quite an amplified pattern, split flow with ridging moving into the southern tier of the state. A very strong jet, 140 knots, becomes 120 as it approaches the southwest. So this system here will be the reason why systems begin to slow and we get locked into a low pressure out here to the west while we get ridging over the Canada and Alaska borders. So at the 9,000-foot level, we're going to have a very strong jet max. Will be ranging between 40 to 60 miles per hour across the western tier of the state with a stronger wind over the Gulf between 20 to 45 knots. Change of wind direction out here along the Bering with a northerly flow on the backside of the low for the western and central Aleutians all the way through the Aleutian chain, actually between 30 to 45 knots. At the 3,000-foot level, looking at very similar wind trends with the strongest winds across the southwest between 40 to 45 knots, and then across the Gulf also strong winds out there 30 to 35 knots and southerly flow across much of the state. Watch out for turbulent concerns across the western tier of the state. Moderate conditions expected with conditions possible across much of the west.
Goodbye, Summer Triangle. Hello, Orion.
Greetings, stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky.
Daylight saving time is over, and with sunset time super early again, you can see the stars a lot earlier at night.
That's right, James. And as darkness falls, Mars, who's been hanging around since summer, will greet you. But we'd still like you to stay up a little later so you can see both the stars of the summer and the constellations of winter.
In the west, the stars that lit up our summer vacation and accentuated our 4th of July fireworks, the Summer Triangle, are heading out for the season.
While in the east, the stars of winter will start poking their heads above the horizon. And one guy's wearing a snazzy belt. Let's show you. Okay, we've got our sky set up for about 9 p.m. facing southwest. What's that bright red planet about halfway up in the sky?
You almost answered your own question, Dehne. It's the red planet Mars. Mars lies between our fading summer stars and our newly rising winter ones.
To see them all, you need to stay up a little later. That's when the stars of winter start to appear. If you start stargazing at 9 p.m., you'll see the familiar stars of the Summer Triangle in the western sky.
These are, in order of brightness, Vega, Altair, and Deneb, and you'll see them in this part of the sky for a few more weeks. Vega is part of the constellation Lyra the Harp,
which looks like a little parallelogram attached to Vega.
Altair is part of the eagle constellation named Aquila,
which looks like a diamond shape.
And Deneb is the tail of Cygnus the Swan,
which some people also call the Northern Cross.
Each night, these stars will set earlier and earlier, but they will linger in the evening skies through December.
Boy, I wish summer would linger right through December.
Now, let's face east to preview the stars of winter. Here you'll find 6 of the 20 brightest stars in the sky and some of the most distinct and recognizable constellations.
2 stars of similar brightness are low in the northeast. You might call them twins.
They're Pollux and Castor, stars that mark the heads of the celestial Gemini twins.
Up higher in the east, you'll spot bright white Capella. This is the brightest star in the constellation Auriga the Charioteer.
Over to the right of Capella is a star with an orange tint embedded in a V shape of fainter stars. This is the bullseye of Taurus the Bull, a star called Aldebaran.
But enough messing around. Let's zoom into the real sign of the season, the belted one, Orion the Hunter. Do you see him over there low in the east? Orion is easy to find with his distinctive 3 stars in a row just above the treetops. The belt stars bear the Arabic names Al-Natak, Al-Nalam, and Mintaka.
The belt is definitely cool, but the brighter stars in Orion are great to check out too. The bluer star to the right is called Rigel. That marks the left foot of the mighty Orion. Rigel is one of the absolute brightest stars around. It's really far away as stars go, at almost 800 light years from us.
Then, the star in Orion that is decidedly redder is up and to the left of the belt. This is Betelgeuse, a supergiant red star about 640 light years away. It's easy to remember because it just so happens to mark Orion's armpit. Betelgeuse is one of the largest stars in the galaxy. If it took the place of our sun, Betelgeuse would extend out beyond the orbit of Mars. That means the Earth would orbit inside it.
Ouch.
So enjoy the early stargazing this week and look for Mars popping out just after sunset halfway up in the southern sky.
Then stay up later to see the summer triangle setting in the west.
While Orion, Gemini, Auriga, and Taurus rise in the east.
You'll see the stars of summer and the winter in one glorious night. It's all there when you keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, and now on to the marine segment of the show, and let's take a look at the north and west coast. What we're going to see is some strong winds out of the east, pulling that cold air mass across, and we're going to see development of ice. We've already filled in along the Chukchi Sea coast there, so expect that ice growth to continue as we head through the next day at least. Now for the areas of the Bering, we are going to see warm air mass push north, so probably seeing a push of the ice to the north, and those warmer conditions are not going to keep allowing that ice to grow. So we'll have that effect for the next few days actually with the warmer temperatures. Now let's take a look at the southeast locations for your Friday forecast, looking at mainly a northerly flow, and then across the inner channels here, the seas are going to be between 2 to 4 feet higher seas to the north with gustier conditions possible. And then small craft advisory right outside the lower channels there. And then we're going to see on Saturday fairly light wind across the area between 10 to 15 knots, all out of the north direction, becoming a little bit more of a southwesterly direction across the northern waters there. Now Friday for the North Gulf and towards the Cook Inlet, we're going to see some stronger winds pushing up for the inlet locations. Small craft advisory for your Friday, and then more of a northerly flow across the inlet and Prince William Sound locations. Seas across the inlet and Prince William Sound between 2 to 5 feet. Elsewhere, we're going to see between 5 to 9 feet. Now, on your Saturday forecast, stronger winds are going to be moving up and affecting all of the area, coming up to small craft levels out of the south direction with higher gusts, possibly 15 knots over. And then seas on this day will be between 6 to 12 feet, the highest seas, of course, across the Kenai Peninsula. Looking out across the Alaska Peninsula, stronger winds for your Friday with higher gusts across the areas of the eastern Bristol Bay coming out of the channels, channel terrain there across the Alaska Peninsula. Gales for most of the area with small crafts near Kodiak Island, all out of the south direction, with seas between 10 to 20 feet, highest seas across the Pacific side. And then on your Saturday forecast, expect storm force gusts across the Bristol Bay locations, and then we'll mainly see gales for much of the area. Small craft there for Shelikof Strait. Seas on this day will again be between 10 to 20 feet, a little bit higher seas across the North Pacific side and just along the Alaska Peninsula coast there. Now let's take a look at your western, out towards your western Aleutians, the lighter wind speeds, and then towards your eastern Aleutians, we're seeing up to 45 knots. Higher gusts are possible. So gales for much of the Aleutian chain there, otherwise small craft with seas on this day between 10 to 25 feet. The highest seas are going to be south of the Aleutian chain, and then we'll see seas in the upper teens across the western Aleutians there. Looking at your Saturday forecast, winds are going to stay on the stronger side. However, the strongest winds will be across mainly the eastern Aleutians there, and we'll see a westerly component for the winds with seas between 10 to 20 feet, a little bit lower seas on this day. For the west coast, very active system here is going to bring stronger gusts late Friday with small craft to begin with, gales there just south of Nunivak Island. Seas on this day will range between 4 to 12 feet. Higher gusts in the evening through Saturday with winds sustaining between 35 to 40 knots, so gale criteria with higher gusts and storm force winds there along the Kuskokwim Delta. Seas on this day will range between 8 to 15 feet. Highest seas there south of Nunivak Island. And then we'll see Friday forecast for the north coast on the lower side of 20 knots. Northwest coast will be at 25 knots. All out of the east direction, becoming more southeasterly, south of the Bering Strait there, and seas in ice-free waters will be between 7 and 9 feet. On Saturday, we're going to see a little bit stronger winds across the area with gales for Kotzebue Sound and south through the strait, and we'll see a change of wind directions there as well to the southwest with seas between 7 to 14 feet in ice-free waters. And then let's recap your forecast as we head into the end of the week. We're going to see a very strong front overnight tonight with a reinforcing push through the end of the week, bringing some snow and rain mainly across the southwestern areas, drier conditions across the southeast into Saturday. So be prepared for an active weather pattern for much of the state.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal, pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.